It appears to me we are live on YouTube. So good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate's Committee on Institutions. Today is the 11th of March, 2021. I am Joe Benning, your host and official chair of this committee. We also have Senators Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Mazza from Grand Isle, McCormick from Windsor, and Parent from Franklin County. We are in the middle of conversation about certain sections on the spreadsheet that we have in institutions. And today specifically, we're going to go back to section 1 where we were yesterday, but this time talk about lines 7 through 22 to start, the area known as ongoing projects. Yesterday, we talked about ongoing projects that weren't necessarily part of the current biennium's expenditures, but now we're going to shift into the area of ongoing projects that are in the capital bill in this coming biennium. And specifically, we're looking at lines 7 through 22. Eric, Phil Korn is here from BGS. I remember yesterday you did most of the talking. I don't know whether you're all talked out at this point or you want to shift to anybody else, but I'll let you lead off. How's that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I am Eric Philcorn, Principal Assistant at Buildings and General Services. I have Jeremy Stevens, our Program Chief, with us today, and I believe he is more intimate with the individual projects. We gave you an overview way back when the bill first dropped earlier in the session. And there may have been some progress as some of these are ongoing projects and others are new projects, but the lines we are working with right now are ones that have asks in the current biennium. And so I think if Jeremy can give a thumbnail of each and then pause and see if you guys want to go deeper on any or all of them, that might be the best way to work through it, if that makes sense to you.
I appreciate that. And Jeremy, as Eric describes, a thumbnail sketch. Our next conversations with the Department of Labor at 2:30. So take all the time to need you thumbnail. But as I'm saying that to you, I'm hoping that Denise is hearing me say that and she's contacting looks like there's only one other person that might be joining us at that point to talk about the Department of Labor. So Jeremy, welcome to Senate Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Jeremy Stevens. I am a program chief with BGS, and I'm here to walk you through lines 3 through 22, was it, of the capital bill request?
Actually, 7.
7 through 22. Yep. Thank you. We've gone through these before, and not much has changed. So I'll just go through them again with a very minor update here and there as I get to those items. I'm probably going to skip the DOL item since you're going to talk about it at 2:30 with Director Joe Asia, if that's all right. And other option here is maybe presenting the 10-year plan so we can walk through these lines together. Is that what you would like me to do?
I'm fine with that. Eric wants to chip in though.
I was just going to say, we actually did go through the 10-year plan items. So we reviewed 23 down yesterday. So if we could stick with what's coming in the current biennium. And I think probably the best way to look at it is that the capital bill, whatever the House does to it, it's going to come across in the next couple of weeks. And so just to get them up to speed, so when this lands with them, they have good recall and understanding of what the pieces are that are coming their way. So Cherry Street for starters.
Yeah, so would you like me to share the list so that we're all looking at the same item here?
Yes, please. I don't know. Do you have that ability or does Denise need to grant you that authority?
Let's see, I'm gonna click the button here and it says host disabled. So I think Denise needs to flip the switch there.
Needs to make Jeremy a host.
Hopefully Denise is not calling somebody else right now to get them to speed up their appearance time today.
Nope, we're there.
Yeah, I think Joe will be joining us after he finishes his other meeting. So,
all right, okay. Looks like I've got some access here, and I need to find my document. And please excuse me, I have not done this before. So one moment so I can find out how to, there it is.
They will ask you to make it bigger straight away. I guarantee
Yes.
it.
I tried to get it sized.
Well, that looks pretty good, actually.
Oh,
Perfect.
he's better than me.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm not seeing you anymore, so please feel free to interrupt me. And I assume that everybody can now see our spreadsheet that was included in the capital bill request.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay, starting with number 7 here, line number 7. Burlington 108 Cherry Street parking garage. This project has been on its way for quite some time. We are nearing the end of design. In fact, we are reviewing construction documents right now. That review is going to be completed on Monday, the 15th. And we'll get those comments back to the design team for them to make their last round of changes before we have a set of bid documents. So we're going to see, advertisement for construction bids here very soon. In the last design phase, we got the cost estimates of around 19 million, right? And we had almost 16 million previously allocated, hence the request for FY22, an additional just over $3 million to match that design estimate.
Is that anticipating the latest design you're expecting?
Yes, it is. And it includes some other things. We're gonna have to provide some temporary parking for staff, being that the garage will be shut down during construction.
But that 16 million is, 19 million is expected to complete the project.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay.
Any questions? Other questions?
Yeah, committee, I can't see you either, so if you have a question, just holler out. Don't hear anybody, so I guess we can keep going.
Sounds good. Line 8, Springfield Southern State Correctional Facility door control. This project is also in design. It's just starting to begin the design development phase. And the schematic design estimate showed us at about $5 million. And so we had 2.4 previously, 2.45 previously allocated. So the request for FY22 and FY23 is for that balance that you'll see here, 2.1 million in FY22 and 700,000 in FY23. We did receive a question in the House as to why the money was split that way, and just the process of developing the capital bill request and being required to level fund FY22, FY23. That's how those dollars were split. But these are expected to be the last monies requested to complete the project at this time.
Jeremy, if my memory serves, we've been talking about this for an awful long time. And I'm not sure whether there was more than one project here, but do you know anything about the history of this door control unit?
I might need to kick it over to Eric, but I've been here for 15 months and we've been talking about door controls a lot. There's another door control project that is just now finishing up in Newport at the Northern State Correctional Facility. And that was a separate funding item. And we have future door control projects.
Gee, $5 million, you could build a prison for that.
That's just the planning, Dick.
Yeah.
Gee, no, don't go there.
No.
$5 million.
That might be about a quarter of the planning.
What the hell is $5 million for door control? Jesus.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is lessons learned from Newport. The Springfield experiences a lot of abuse in the doors. There's a lot of creative folks down there that can find ways to make the doors not align. And when the doors don't align, the magnets don't align, and they don't report back to the control panel that to state whether or not that door is secure. And so sometimes it says the door is secure and it's not, or sometimes it says it's not secure and it is. And so we're having to beef up the infrastructure there of the doors themselves to try to eliminate some of those causes.
I go back to Barney White. He had a key to the doors, and you lock the key with a door. You know what the hell?
I just recall from being on this committee a long time ago that the Springfield door controls, for some reason or other, my memory is telling me that there was an issue back then, and that's 10 years ago. So I'm trying to figure out, is there anybody that has an overall look at what has been done at Springfield to get some handle on what's going on?
Has Joe come in yet? I believe he might be in the, I don't know if he's in the waiting room, but Joe Asia will be with us in a few minutes, and he has obviously ample institutional memory. But the door controls are kind of like our fleet of plow trucks, and they age out at different times. And we plan to do the work around the state in stages, and that often involves moving inmates out of a unit for a period, fitting up alternate facilities, cycling through different facilities. So it's a big, long, ongoing piece of work. I think I referenced painting the Golden Gate Bridge at one point in describing that this is one of those things they just keep wearing out over time. And so we keep doing the work, and as the projects become more immediate, they'll get called out as a single line item. But we're pretty much always doing door controls somewhere.
Check your heart. No,
Okay, I guess
If I may, Mr.
yeah, but tell me you're doing a good job.
Mr. Chair, if I may add.
Dick
to that,
McCormick, I see your lips are moving, but you're muted.
You folks are the experts and we're just politicians, and I understand that. And there's probably stuff I don't understand. But still, I've got to say, the numbers, people have been locking bad guys up in jail for thousands of years. It's not rocket science. And I would like a real kind of where the money's going. What exactly are we getting for our money? Because this is, well, it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And I'm feeling a little guilty about how we spend it.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
Try to respond to some of the concerns there. And so the door control name is a little bit misleading because it's pretty complex in that each door has electronic controls that report back to a control panel. And currently that control panel is analog. It's got hard push buttons with lights, and those buttons break and the lights don't work. And then again, we have the door alignment issue that's not reporting correctly back to the control panel. So this project is to match the system they installed in Newport, which is a digital control center. And that's a screen, a touch screen, like a large iPad, if you will, that can show all the doors and all the corridors and sally ports. And then it's just a touch screen on, off, open door, closed door with other icons that show you what status each element is in. But it includes much more than doors. It's also an intercom system. So they get to a door and they push a button and the intercom lights up and can talk to whoever's controlling the control panel for that door. There's also a camera system tied into that. So they push the button, the intercom lights up, and then the camera lights up also. So now the person at the control panel can be almost anywhere in the facility and see who is calling the intercom and the camera for that location. So the cameras that are existing are all very old as well. So there's upgrade to all the cameras in the entire facility. And I don't think the intercoms are in too bad a shape, but that's just connecting them to the new system. There's also additional controls in each living unit to be able to turn showers on and off, lights on and off, etc. It's really a full control system that a guard, that DOC might call them something else. I don't want to be incorrect here, but for lack of a better term, a guard, a correction officer, thank you, Eric. A correction officer can have a hub and have full control over, for example, a living unit, and also have some confirmation that doors, for example, are operating as they should. Right now, not knowing what the doors are doing because the control centers may or may not be working correctly. They're going around and checking every door, having to slam doors shut several times to make sure that the doors are secure. And BGS operations and maintenance is also helping out with that, trying to fix up some of the alignment issues and just limp these things along. But as I said, the system is taking quite a bit of abuse and is now just over, might be right at 20 years old since it was originally installed.
Yeah, I've got three comments, and then I'll shut up and we can proceed. One is I'm not trying to torture you here. I don't expect a definitive answer right now. What I was saying is I would like maybe just a couple of these things, a real itemized bill of where exactly this money's going. The second thing I got to say is if the analog system is not always reliable and we're replacing it with a digital system, well, that may be a good idea for other reasons. But no one can tell me that that's not going to malfunction. The main difference is when the digital systems malfunction, you're totally in the dark. Whereas with an analog, maybe you can jerry rig it. And I apologize for being a curmudgeon, but I think we're spending a lot of money. That's all. I would like an itemized, and let's just pick this particular one out as an example of just why it's as expensive. Because your explanation, my layman's understanding is that might explain, a couple of $1,000. I don't know how we get that high.
Sure. And I'll have to talk to my commissioner's office on how much I can share, but we could, I have the cost estimate, right, which breaks it down to pretty finite detail. I could throw one more example out if you don't mind. These doors that have taken heavy abuse, we have approximately about 80 doors. I think it's just over 80 doors that require full replacement, right? That's the door slab, that's the jamb, it's the kick plate, it's everything. And those are about $16,000 a piece. And it's just labor intensive. With the facility itself is split face block that was prefabricated and installed on site. And so it's a little bit different construction there as well. But yeah, if okay with the commissioner's office, we could share some of the cost estimating information that we have on hand.
I could potentially be convinced. I mean, all of us have seen some angry guy get elected to the school board to stop all this wasteful spending, and 4 years later, he's the one defending the budget to the town. Okay, because he's looking at it. It may well be. This right now looks excessive to me, and I'd like to be convinced otherwise.
If you haven't had the pleasure of seeing one of these facilities from the inside, once you actually get under the hood and see how it's a building full of people who are more often than not intent on breaking things, and therefore we have to go to greater lengths in every regard to prevent them from breaking things. So plumbing a sink or an electrical outlet or a sprinkler head, all of these things that seem so straightforward in a home become much, much more complicated. And I hope, if you haven't already, at some point when the coast clears, to seize the opportunity to actually tour one of these facilities. It's fascinating to see.
With a prearranged visit, Dick, not because you were sentenced to go there.
Before I was in the legislature, I used to go into the jails with my guitar to give them a show, and I remember the security stuff.
Well, I've visited all of these facilities except for Marble Valley. And my frustration has always been that even if they have, whether it's analog, digital, or just the old hand crank, my frustration has always been when trying to get out, if a particular guard didn't happen to like you as a defense attorney. I could stand there all day pressing buttons or jumping up and down trying to wave or banging on the window. And they're just kind of, I don't know, watching TV or something. But anyway, I digress. I love our corrections officers. I don't want to have Commissioner Baker come back and yell at me in a minute. we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other door controls, a couple of lines down. So we'll continue the conversation momentarily.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, before we move on, would you like to make that an item for us to follow up on, is looking at sharing the estimate for the door control
I
portion?
think it would be an educational experience for the committee to get some understanding, because these are large American dollars we're dealing out here. And when you're talking about something that just simply says door control on the itemized list, it's really difficult for somebody to get a true understanding. And we have 3 new members on the committee. We also, one of those 3 has been on the committee before, but letting people know that these very large dollar amounts actually have a series of costs attached to them is an educational experience for everybody. So Jeremy, I'd appreciate if you could give us a little bit of a breakdown. I think the ultimate lesson here, though, Dick, is that we should come back in our next life as jail door installers.
Well, I thought he was going to be an architect.
No, that's me.
No, that's Dick Mazza. He's,
Oh, right. Career day.
yeah. All right. So what's going on in Asa Bloomer?
All right, Asa Bloomer, major renovations. There had been previous allocations here for replacing some equipment on the roof. And that work was going on just as I came on. So I'm not as privy to what had happened in previous allocations as maybe Eric might be. But this allocation is to address a major roof repair, which includes a very large skylight. And there's also a bit of a sewer issue in the basement. The sewer runs underneath the building, and there is occasional flooding, which hasn't happened in quite some time, but occasional flooding and typical odor that comes from that. So we really need some help investigating what's causing that and what a potential fix for that will be. So those are the items covered here, and the money is split for I gotta minimize some other windows that are up here. The money is split for design and then construction. So you'll see FY22 $400,000 for some design, investigation, and hopefully maybe even some work to stop the issues that are happening in the basement. And then 1.575 million for the roof and skylight renovation.
A little more background on this building. It was acquired under a lease to own scheme that was obviously worked out about 25 years ago. It came into our possession 3 or so years ago. And oddly enough, toward the end of a lease period, a landlord is a little less likely to fix things than they are early in the game. And so we inherited 2 very old the Asa Bloomer building is actually 2 buildings that are joined together by an atrium. And so when he talks about the skylight, it's actually the roof above the atrium. And when he talks about the sewer line, I believe there's still some investigation going on as to whether or not the sewer line is even necessarily associated with the building. But neither here nor there, things are coming up in our basement when the water comes up. And the gases are coming up in the building, whether the water is coming up or not. So the building has a long list of issues that any older building would have. We've knocked out some of the immediate threats like the cooling towers. So we're at less of a risk.
Eric, I'm curious, the ability of BGS to look at a given building like this one and call up all the expenditures that have been made on it over time.
Some of they go on for a bunch more years. I beg your pardon?
Am I frozen out?
I just got word that I'm unstable, and so is my internet connection.
We knew that.
Okay.
I don't know, did you hear my soliloquy?
I sort of did, but I asked a question. I wasn't sure if you heard me.
Oh, I did not, sir.
No,
Okay.
you're not frozen.
I'm curious with respect to each one of these items, but I'll use the Asa Bloomer building as one example. Does BGS have the ability to call up all of the expenditures that have been made through the years to decide at some point in time that maybe we should sell this property to the next
Okay.
potential owner, and then decide to stop spending money on a building that's really past its prime?
Two-part answer. There, 108 Cherry is a good example of a situation where we asked ourselves that question. And actually, Senator Mazza, you'll love this. We hired a consultant to do an analysis to determine. Well, I know when he does this. We really wanted to see, was the building, even with all of the work that was necessary, worth holding on to based on our needs for situating people in Burlington and around, and we ran 7 or 8 different scenarios and determined that it actually was worth holding on to. We are in the process, we just got approval today from ADS to start a project deploying a I can't remember, WIMS, Workplace Integrated Management System, that is going to be able to crunch every work order, every dollar we spend on maintenance on all of our buildings versus the life cycle of all of the equipment and the roofs and the walls and the bits and pieces. And we will have the ability to actually do that analysis internally. Right now, it's really, spreadsheets, maintenance people's memories. It's very ad hoc, but we see the importance of being able to make those kinds of calls and decide based on data what's worth holding on to and what's maybe not worth holding on to. So
I'm just thinking this through, Eric. With all of the appearances that some of these entities make on this spreadsheet through the years, that we seem to be relying on institutional memory and present understanding of the condition of the building and making decisions. And with all the technology that we have out there these days, I'm just wondering if there isn't some relatively inexpensive program that's available so that you can, for instance, plug in Asa Bloomer building and watch the expenditures through the years to take that kind of up and down expense through the years into consideration when considering how to move forward on a given building.
And the answer is yes. And we received internal approval today to start work on the project that will give us that capability. And I think that work is going to start at the end of March. It's going to take us about a year to 18 months to get the data on all of our buildings into that system. And, we will base our kind of baseline data set on the facilities condition assessments that we've been doing over the past 5 or 6 years. But the system will put all of that information in one place, and it'll be kind of, I think of it as like our moral calculator of, 10 years from now, what kind of money are we going to have to be putting into this building? How much is it costing us per employee or per customer to maintain this building? We're going to be able to ask those questions and answer them and present you with much better data in order to help explain why these things are happening. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying, and we are actually doing something about it.
So how many millions are you going to need to design that software?
We gotta hire an architect to figure it out.
No, it's off the shelf software, not quite Microsoft Word, but it's already covered under a General Services Administration contract that exists. And I wouldn't want to quote a price out loud because I'd probably be wrong. But relative to some of these other numbers you're looking at, it is relatively inexpensive.
Corey?
Well, the other piece too I have is some of these buildings is, and I don't know if you're doing the analysis, but I can tell you probably as someone who's got 30, 35 more years in the workforce, I don't anticipate ending my career in a building. I anticipate at some point my career is going to be my lovely home office that I'm in now. and my guess is COVID's obviously has sped that up. Like, are we doing the analysis on how do we tactfully start to shrink our square footage across the state in the coming years and using this software? Because I'm guessing we're not going to need it, even if we have to increase the workforce.
That's a good point.
Which is part of the reason we are requesting authority to sell the properties on Baldwin Street and trying to, in general, in our space planning, move out of leased space and into space that we own, revising our space standards for how we accommodate our people, and COVID being a major catalyst for it. There are also working groups across state government that are looking at how we're going to come back, what the future workplace is going to look like. There are people who are much more long-winded than even me, who could go into great detail. Tennessee is a leader in this. Even before COVID, they were reducing the footprint of their workforce substantially and changing the way, you know, people, just like up at National Life, people share desks. They're back and forth between San Antonio, and they're, you know, they grab a laptop and they go and plug in, and they're in a different office the next week. I think you'll see a lot more of that. You know, there are certain facilities that we have to maintain just from a customer service standpoint. But yes, things are going to change.
Okay,
I think that analysis, obviously this year it's late, but part of the 10-year analysis is where do we, you know, what can we cut out for expenses? Because it doesn't make sense to put a 30-year or 50-year roof on something we're looking to sell in the next 5 years. You know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's, you know, even with, for instance, the Women's Correctional Facility in Chittenden County, we're getting very close to the point at which a roof replacement will be necessary. So we need to make a policy decision about the facility before we put a new roof on. And again, you know, across all of our hundreds of buildings, this software application is going to help us look at, you know, okay, let's say between all of our buildings, we have I'm making up a number, but 150 chillers. And in, you know, 2028, 75 of them are going to be past their useful life. Do we, you know, what's the replacement cycle for that equipment type across our whole portfolio? How are our roofs collectively? And, you know, you're right. A lot of it is institutional knowledge. It's reporting from our maintenance staff in the field. And it's, you know, sometimes a judgment call from a district manager. And sometimes it's, you know, it's you folks calling our attention to problems when you hear about them in your respective districts. So.
It's just interesting. I just finished a book. It's called Smart Towns or Strong Towns. It's about municipalities, but, you know, it really questions the having as much public infrastructure as we have, because it becomes a liability, not an asset. And it's much like a pension system that we let get bloated, and now can we truly ever afford to keep up?
good conversation. Eric, if you get to the point where you're making a decision about the women's correctional facility, though, you'll have to take the policy question over to judiciary.
I would myself stay out of the policy piece, and I simply remain cognizant that we are doing periodic roof repairs there.
Yeah, well, there are some elements in the building who believe that the women should not be incarcerated at all. So maybe you won't have to make any decision other than to sell.
I will endeavor to stay in my lane, sir.
Yes, sir. Moving on, the State House having HVAC renovations. This ought to be fun.
Jeremy, give me a break.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Montpelier State House HVAC renovations. This, minimize another window here so I can see what you're looking at. This project received $500,000 in funding during the last biennium so that we could get started with the design process and other work. And we are currently drafting that contract for a design team to get started and start developing what it is going to take to renovate the State House HVAC systems. As you know, there was a mold issue a few years ago now, a couple summers ago anyways. And, you know, as it's explained to me, you know, these mechanical systems are old, and now the State House is has a higher occupancy than it used to, and so the demands are different. You throw in a pandemic, and the need for fresh air changes things as well, right? So that's basically, very basically, the need for this project. There's some other technical issues that the State House has, such as the heat sources from the steam plant right across the street. And so there's no heat provided to the State House in the summertime. And when you have high humidity during the summertime and you have no way to dry that air out and decrease the humidity, is when you have most of your mold growth. So quite a few things going on here, and add to the fact that not only is it a State House, but it's also a museum. This is it's going to be a very complicated project. So we have the money for design, and we're getting started with that. We expect design to carry through to the beginning of FY23, which is when we will need construction funds to go out to construction, which brings in this request in FY23 for just over 2.5 million. That's our current estimate.
The way that I'm reading it, though, you're asking for it in 22.
That was requested in FY22, and then in the discussions with the administration while developing the request, it was moved to FY23.
And just to be clear, this is not for designing purposes. This is actually for constructing the HVAC renovations.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct. We do have funds for design.
Okay.
Joe, I have to go over to GovOps.
Okay. Good luck. Let them know I can't be there.
Sounds good.
All right, Jeremy, next up.
Yep, if no other questions, we'll go to the Newport Courthouse replacement. So I believe the allocation during the last biennium was 1.5 million to start searching for property and seeing and finding a new location for the new Newport Courthouse. As many of you probably know, the existing courthouse is, again, another aging structure and ADA issues, a lot of structural issues. Things just do not work programmatically for the tenants there anymore. There's quite a few users in there, surprisingly. And so we started this process of finding a new home for the folks that are working in Newport. So that property search, we have responses for the property search, and negotiations are underway. And I'm sorry, I not only am I not privy to those negotiations, but I understand that we're not allowed to share that at the time until there's a contract in place, which moves me into what we're requesting for FY22 and 23 is once those negotiations are complete and a contract is in place, we'll then need funding to do the programming, the planning and programming work for that new facility. So that will that's the FY22 funds request of $507,000. So that's going to take a design team to get with us and all the stakeholders and get an understanding of what truly is needed in the new Newport Courthouse facility, and start to put some bubble diagrams and cost estimates to those needs. And then we would move, once we have a firm understanding of what that's going to take, we then move into design in earnest, right? We'll take that planning and go into schematic design, design development, and construction documents and bid documents with the FY23 funds, which is the $525,000 you see here. And I'm just going to scroll over to the 10-year plan, and you'll see our current estimate for construction funds are in FY, or spread out across FY24 and FY25.
So $9 million
Yeah.
builds it. The $9 million figure builds it.
That's our current estimate. We obviously don't have nearly enough detail, and that's what the design in FY, the planning and design in FY22, 23 will hopefully help us confirm that we're close, if not under that, right? We always want to be under that, but that's our current guess.
Is that for combining the two courthouses or just one?
So Eric, I might need your help, or Joe, I think Joe's here now. I might need your help on this because I don't fully understand how the two buildings facilitate together. Because I believe there's also some county personnel mixed in there.
I'd be more than happy to jump in. Good
Hi,
afternoon,
Joe.
Senators. Joe Aja, Director for Design and Construction, Buildings and General Services. For the Newport courthouses, yes, Senator, they will be combined. They're under the way the judiciary is running it now. They have one lead person for both courts, and the new building will house both courts, which will allow the state building to be put up for sale. And the county building I can't speak for them, but that'll become vacant to be repurposed for something else.
So I'm going to jump in and ask first, you got in 22 $500,000 for the first half of planning, in 23 another $500,000 for the second half of planning. Again, that sounds like a lot of money. Is that standard practice for something like this?
For design is typically between 8 and 14% of the cost of the project. It depends on really how difficult or how expensive you have for systems, HVAC systems, or the structure itself. And right now we don't really know, but we're looking to, as Jeremy said, we were out looking for land. We have some options. And because this is purchasing land, it would also require us to do some additional testing to the property to make sure that there are no hazardous waste or anything like that in it, and to make sure that the property can accommodate us. It also then is to look at combining both courts. There was a study done, I want to say 3 years ago now, to look at combining the two courts, and we did end up with a connector, and the cost was around 13-14 million to connect the two buildings and make it work. And that's why we're looking to replace with a new building to house both entities in that, as opposed to doing a connector. So it's not 100% sure that all of this goes to design. Right now, that's how we have it. Any money that is left over would certainly be going to the construction side of things.
So the 9 million as it's currently listed, you don't know how much the property is going to cost at this point. Is the property included in that estimate or no?
The total project cost, yes, it
Okay.
is.
And the city's apprised of, all this, the city's aware.
They are aware that we're looking for land. I mean, it was public knowledge that we went out with a proposal to search for land, and we have had several people provide a response to that. And as Jeremy said, we're in negotiations right now. Other than that, if the deal that we're working with right now with the lead property, if that falls through, then we either go look at one of the other properties that were presented or go back out for another search. Once we do solidify on a property, we will then do some programming so we know exactly what size the building needs to be. And during that process of programming and design, we will then be reaching out to the city to comply with their zoning regulations and any permits that are required.
And
So just for educational purposes, Joe, if property proposal 1 or 2 fall through and there's another entity out there that wants to approach the state with some kind of an offer of property, what would they have to do in order to make that known? And to whom should they go?
Right now, if they haven't already submitted, it's too late because we're already in negotiation with at least one of the property owners. If all that fell through, we would go back out on advertising again for additional properties if the ones that we have in here do not work. And it could be even after the one property that we are looking at right now fell through, the other ones may not meet our needs. So when we're looking for property, we want to be, for a courthouse, you certainly want to be municipal water and sewer, power, the bus route, all of that. So we wouldn't be looking to go on the outskirts of town where you wouldn't have that. So are looking somewhat for more of a downtown setting. Newport somewhat spread out a little bit, but that's what we would be looking for. So if it fell through, that would be the time to go out. It's not to say that, I guess if there was somebody who was interested and sent an email to our Director of Property Management, who's also our Deputy Commissioner now, Mark O'Grady, that could be put in the file. So that if something did fall through, that it would be there. But we would go back out for a proposal for new land.
Yep. So on
It
the
just seems-
opposite end of the spectrum, the buildings that are currently there would obviously be given up for their current use. If there was an entity that wanted to purchase those, what would they have to do in order to make that offer?
We would put a proposal together, just like we would with buying land or looking for a design and construction firm. It would be advertised in the newspaper that we were selling land, and that would be the route, unless I misspoke, Eric.
I was just going to say, before we do anything, we would seek the permission of the legislature to sell the property. And you would see that coming your way in a capital bill
Yes.
eventually. And also, I just wanted to interject that I believe it was last fall, we did have a meeting with regional economic development folks and city officials. I'm all Zooms look the same over time, but we are sharing information with the municipality as appropriate as we go. So
Okay.
Just seems that if we're gonna put a 100-year building in a city that has a economic liability in their city with a big hole in the ground, and that building's gonna be there for 100 years, that it'd be a better partnership to include the city in every aspect of the negotiations. And maybe you are, but I don't think that you are. And I don't think it's any secret that I've got a little bit of rub about this. And I've sent a couple of emails and letters to your directors and to the administration. I just think that when you're going to put a 100-year building in a downtown of the city, that there should be better communications. But that's just my thought.
Not having seen those emails, I'll just pause to note that the opinions expressed by the senator from Essex Orleans are not necessarily those of the institutions committee. They may be, but I haven't seen them, so I don't draw any
and
conclusions.
not all emails sent to BGS get to Eric Philcorn. So this is news to me, your concerns, and I appreciate hearing of them.
All right, we got to keep moving on. And I think the next thing I've got is the rest of the door controls.
Yes, Mr. Chair, next item, statewide door controls. And this has been kind of a rolling request item in past bienniums. Southern State was on this list, but that has since dropped off since funding is received. And so this line constitutes the remaining facilities that need attention to their door control systems, very similar to Southern State and Northern State, just different size, if you will. So we've got a total project cost of just over 5.5 million. And the plan here is to begin design in FY23. And we're requesting $671,000 to begin that process. And additional design and construction funds for other facilities are then you'll see spread out further out in the 10-year plan as to how that may come together after
So
we get the design started.
a couple of questions here. Why was the Springfield facility moved into a separate line item?
Mr. Chair, that was before my time. I might need to just that process and how that goes. I might need to kick that over to Director Asia to explain.
Okay, only because to keep it separate, because the main line item that you see that Jeremy's talking about right now is for us to start the design processing and going on those facilities. Springfield now was a facility that we have moved forward with. We originally started with Newport, had a line item to go out to find a door control system that we could use in all of our facilities, and then start with a Newport facility. Newport's done. We now know the door control system that we're using And this Springfield is its own line item just for that. We're asking for the second line item so that we're somewhat keeping Springfield separate on its own, and the next facilities for design will be bundled. Once those facilities are unknown design cost or construction cost, they too would become a line item.
So the Springfield facility has already had its design completed?
It's in the design process right now, but we know what we want for a door control system. So that's the computer end of things on the backbone, what type of cameras and door locks we're going to use. And then now it is really the engineering team and architects are putting forth some of the contract documents for the design of how to route your wiring, what type of doors that we're going to need, because some doors have to be changed out.
So the design, you use the term bundled, and I'm looking at two separate line items.
Yes.
Is it simply
Springfield-
because Springfield was done sooner than the rest of these facilities? Because in my brain, which may not be anything worth anything, I would say that you could hire one design team to give you a project for each of these facilities instead of hiring two separate design teams. Am I way off base on that?
No, we could, and that was considered. However, each facility is different, even though the door control system is the same. And some of your architects and engineers work well. Some will travel to the Newport area, but not necessarily care for the Rutland or Springfield area. So we do try to spread the work around and not have such a large contract with one architectural or engineering firm. It's also a separate line item that, if the administration was to tell us that, they don't want to proceed with door control projects from this point forward, we would still want Springfield to go. Or I would be looking for Springfield, you guys can cut the budget also, but Springfield would be looking more of a $10 million ask. And I don't know how I would spread that over the years until some of the design work is completed. There is, not to really confuse everybody, but I'm going to do it anyway. There is another component to the Springfield, any of the correctional facilities. At this time, when we move people, the inmates out of a living unit, we have an opportunity to do major maintenance. So we go in at that point in time and do some of the things that we cannot normally do when inmates are in the area. Painting, duct cleaning, new fire alarm, stuff like that. So that too is included in this work. It's just coming out of the major maintenance line item. It is not in this here because it's truly major maintenance work. I would not be here for a line item for painting.
Joe, I don't know when you joined the conversation. We were talking earlier about prospective software that might be able to be used to figure into the mix how much money has been spent over the years when making decisions about what you're going to be doing next. And my thought process here is that if you had that software currently installed, you might be opening up the discussion for combining all of these facilities into a universal mega campus. And I don't know why that thought is popping into my head, but I have seen in the 10 years that I've been in the Senate, many of these line items have been constantly on this spreadsheet. And a lot of the things that I've been looking at have been similar. But at some point, there really does look like all of these facilities are aging in such a way that we either have to make the decision to replace them piecemeal, or it would be more intelligent to have some kind of a mega campus with everything brand new and under the same set of door controls, if you will.
Well, I somewhat agree with you, Mr. Chair. been here for what, going on 38 years now, and reworking areas that I've done, or even part of the new construction, like down at Springfield. Springfield is our newest facility, but it is high abuse, high use. Those doors are opening. Those doors are not your typical average door. They're close to 200 pounds. And when you slam them, I've seen them come off their hinges. We do have inmates who are creative in damaging doors. Plus, the style of door and locking system is different now than it was in the past. The system that we had in Newport was a nice tried and true system. Was you pushed a button and a green light came on that the door was locked, or red and the door was open. All those push buttons are gone now. They no longer manufacture those. Everybody's gone to electronic system. And electronic systems like your Office 365 or your computer that needs to replace every so often, that's part of it. We have Newport, our second newest facility, has held up quite well in certain areas, but the doors this time around quite a few of them needed replacing. The structure itself is whole and doing well.
Okay. It's the second time today I've heard the term creative inmates. Interesting.
Well, I was going to give you an example, but because we were on YouTube, I thought best not.
Understood. All right.
I did, Senator, to finish up, I came in right at the time that you were having that discussion with Eric, and I do concur with Eric on that software. The simple format that you mentioned, that software, we've tried it in Excel. Everybody does it differently. We don't have one person who has been here long enough to maintain one simple system and comes and goes. So that's part of it. The system Eric was talking about, we are hanging our hat on that is going to be the system to capture all of our data and to run reports against.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving. Who's getting new seats now?
Yay, I'm making sure I'm still unmuted here. Montpelier State House carpets, seating, draperies, and interior finishes. This is a recurring request that you'll see out into the future, and the numbers increase slightly because inflation is included as well as a small bonding fee. But you'll see that, and this is a curator's item for the State House curator's item. He's requesting about $50,000, just over $50,000 a year to be able to address a lot of the carpets, draperies, and interior finishes that just need to be maintained in order for us to continue to have a State House / museum in functioning order. But just wanted to scroll over here and show that the FY 22 and 23 requests are 51 and 53,000 respectively. But then you'll just see these recurring requests rolling out into the future. The curator is requesting these to be an annual allocation so that he can address those finish repairs throughout the years.
These are actual repairs, though, not planning dollars.
That's correct. This is materials installed.
Okay.
This is the looming of the carpet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll back here, hopefully not making anybody seasick here. Questions?
Don't see anybody.
120 State Street, steam lines and interior renovations. This is a very large project, and it's an old building. To recall, this building just underwent the installation of the rear stair towers. Right, that was a big project that was just completed.
That's motor vehicle building. Excuse me, motor vehicle building.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and the DMV building directly across the street
Yeah,
from the.
yeah.
So the way this facility was constructed was that the steam lines were installed in the floor slabs on each floor of the facility. And actually, Joe, I'm not sure if it's steam or if it's converted to hot water into the floor. Either way, you have water leaks that are now appearing because those lines in the concrete slabs are old and things are starting to deteriorate. And instead of displacing the entire facility and trying to jackhammer all of these lines out of each floor slab, we're looking at installing a new HVAC system, supplied, of course, by the heat plant with the addition of ventilation and air conditioning. Currently, I think it's just the bottom 2 stories that have ventilation and air conditioning, and above that you'll see a bunch of window shakers sticking out, window single unit air conditioners sticking out of the windows to provide air conditioning. So this project would abandon that existing heat system in place and supply a new HVAC system. And in doing that requires a whole bunch of work inside, dropping ceiling panels, running ductwork, conduits, new electrical, etc. So if we're going to do that, let's go ahead and renovate the interior while we're in there. So this also minimizes displacement. We'll probably have to vacate a floor or 2 at a time, just because we need that space to do the work. And there may be another floor that needs to be vacated just due to construction noise, etc. But we find this option to be the least intrusive. What you see being requested are funds for design in FY23, and that's at the tune of $525,000. And if I scroll out, you'll see additional construction funds requested in the out years, FY24 and FY25.
Okay.
Questions?
Doesn't appear to be.
Now I feel like I'm the one sucking the air out of the room.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about the Brattleboro Courthouse roof to give you a break?
Not well. If you feel like chatting, I'll leave it to the chair to choose who he would like to present the next item.
Go nuts, Eric.
All right. This is actually a good example of a project that we've been patching this roof for some time, and we have hit the point where if we do too much more patching, it's going to be good money after bad. And so we actually got around to scheduling the full replacement of the roof. And this is the kind of project where once we have that workplace integrated management system, we will be able to look at the expenditures over time. And in fact, the system will be set up to ping us and say, hey, you're about to do another repair. It's probably time to think about replacement, or 5 years from now is when you should be replacing this roof. So that is, it's pretty simple. It's a roof, but a good example of the kind of project that we will be managing more efficiently going forward.
The 203 in fiscal year 22, is that planning money?
Design, Joe?
Yes, it would be, it's not all design. We were just, when we are working with the administration, putting the budget together, it's how best to lay this thing out. And some of it is front loading a little bit, but not by much, but it does help. I mean, what we could do is at some point in time, we can come back and tell you what the exact cost was.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that.
Yep.
So the original request was $203,000 in FY22 for design, and we may need to do some hazardous materials abatement. Not too sure until we get up there. And then the remainder would be construction FY23. I just want to point out that what was recommended, which we support, is $100,000. So I lost my hand here. $100,000 in FY23.
Yep.
For design, and the remaining construction funds in FY.
Okay. We need to keep moving.
Moving on. Burlington 32 Cherry parking garage renovations. Similar theme to 108 Cherry, except not as big and not as severe. A lot of surface work here. There's a few structural items, and thankfully we're catching it now to keep that price tag quite a bit lower than 108 Cherry. And so I just need to scroll over here to the governor's recommend to make sure I get the numbers right. So we show 865,000 for FY23. And this is a combination of design and some construction to try to repair some of the areas that may pose a risk to the safety. You know, there's some pieces that are falling. Some of the concrete is eroding and falling. I can't remember if this was the facility where something fell on a car and now that area is cordoned off from the public. And then you'll see the remaining balance for the rest of the construction in FY24. And I need to minimize your faces for a minute because we do have some additional maintenance funds scheduled in the very far out years in FY28 to 31. And on the theme of garages, next one up is the Rutland Multimodal Garage Renovation. This one is as severe as 108 Cherry, hence a very similar price tag. And we are requesting $609,000 to begin the planning and design process in FY23. And again, in the out years, you'll see funding for construction at FY24 and FY25. Statewide stormwater planning, you have all heard plenty of testimony about the 3-acre rule, and this is in response to that. And Mr. Director Asia may be willing to discuss more about our facilities that actually fall into that category. But just wanted to point out our funding request here for $609,000 is some design and some construction to start achieving those stormwater permit requirements. And then you'll see in the out years where we start to request additional funding to bring all of our properties that fit the 3-acre rule into permit conformance.
Do you need more explanation, or when we come back? I think we're slated to talk about this at some time.
Yeah, I think you are too. So why don't we save that?
Okay.
Waterbury State Office Complex historic core roof replacements. And not much to say here, except that all of these structures are historic. They're slate roofs and they're falling apart. And we've been limping them along, repairing leaks here and there. And we've identified that we need a massive overhaul if we're going to prevent further damage, such as rot and mold and other things that may occur when you have a roof leak in a historic structure. So it's a large project, as you see by the total project cost here. And if we scroll out to the out years, you'll see how we have proposed to split it up with about $1 million in FY22 to start the design and the planning process of, okay, which roofs are we going to attack first? And possibly even some construction, and then we really get into construction in earnest in FY23, and then beyond in the out years. You can see how we may be looking to spend additional construction funds to finally achieve replacement of the historic core roofing systems.
Yeah, we can't have any of those buildings get water damage, right, Dick?
Right.
I think we've been out there once before. That
Don't
was
have
the
to
year
come
we
back.
went out to tour, and I learned a lot about politics because CAX was out there with a TV crew, but our chair, Hartwell at the time, he kept running us through the buildings and leaving the TV cameras wondering where the heck we went to. So anyhow, okay.
Mr. Chair, I see Senator McCormick's hand is up.
Oh, sure. Dick, you're muted. You're muted, Dick.
Sorry,
That was beautiful.
usually when there's background noise, I'm not muted. What, are these slate roofs?
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they'll be replaced with slate? Because that's pretty pricey, isn't it?
Jeremy, I can take this.
Thank
We have to, working with
Yeah,
historic,
no,
we do have to, but as we've learned over the years of being out there and seeing this stuff, even with re-insulating our roofs and everything else after Irene fit up, we still have areas of ice buildup in the valleys and the likes of that. So what we're looking to do and work with historic preservation is in the valleys, do away with the slate and install copper. And then the other field areas to use slate, and some of the hidden areas that you don't see from the road or from the site itself is to use a synthetic slate. It's really a rubberized roof that goes on. It's the same product that is on 2 Governor Aiken Avenue.
and that squares with the historic preservation?
Yes, I've had a pre-discussion with them about that because the problem with slate is considered a 100-year roof. The problem is every year slate needs to be tended to. And every time you do go up on the roof, you can crack another slate, which just adds to that workload. So we're trying to minimize that and save dollars over the lifetime. And by having the slate in the areas that can be seen and increase copper in the valleys to eliminate breakage of slate due to ice buildup at that area, they are all for that. The same with the use of the imitation slate in areas like on the backside in valleys that you cannot see.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Moving on, Mr. Chair.
yes, sir.
I was just trying to pull up a little bit of information for the next one because I think you might ask it, but I might not have got it in time, so bear with me here. 111 State Street renovation of stack area, HVAC upgrades and elevator. This is the Supreme Court building in Montpelier. If your back is to the State House, it's to the left, same side of the street. The stack area was until it was before my time. I apologize. I can't recall the year that the state libraries moved out, but that was their home, state libraries, and the stack area is now vacated, and it's a lot of space that is going unused, and there's also a need for office space. So this proposal is to renovate that area into 2 floors of office space. Now, the one issue with that is when we increase that use for the stack area, we increase our demand for HVAC, and the current HVAC system isn't going to be able to provide that. So this would also require an HVAC upgrade, and we'll also provide a new elevator stack. The existing elevator doesn't meet any elevator codes, and I believe that they are increasingly more difficult to repair with not being able to find parts.
Mr. Chair,
Just going to go ahead.
Mr. Chair, do you know if any of this 1.3 billion coming from the federal government is going to be allocated to any air quality? I know they're doing a lot for the schools and stuff. I didn't know if that was a question that for one-time money. You have any idea of anything about that?
I have not heard anything from Jane about that.
Okay.
If she has a chunk of money that's available for capital expenditures, I would envision the question of school reconstruction rearing its head.
Yeah. No, I just didn't know. Okay, it's fine.
But if she throws out a bone for some sum of money, I just haven't heard of that happening yet. Jeremy, can you tell me whether or not the bookshelves are still in there, the stacks?
They are.
My
Mr. Chair, they are.
recollection was that was all iron work and nice tiled floors dating from the probably 1910, 1920 era. Any historical problems there?
No doubt we'll be working with this historic preservation throughout the project, but I don't imagine that there's going to be an issue converting it into office space.
Okay.
Moving
We're
on.
ready to keep going.
Okay, State House exhibition, interpretation, design, and construction. Another item for the State House Curator's Office. I think some of this was in response to a legislative requirement that came out of the last biennium to develop some sort of artwork. I better not talk on that anymore because I don't know the full details of it. Eric might be able to chime in there, but this really is funding to provide an interpretation setup where folks can come in and they have some sort of interpretation device to help them and enjoy the arts of the State House. But so these funds would be for both design and construction.
Yeah,
And I
this
think
was
Eric
our,
does have the details.
this was our committee bill, so we're
Oh,
sort of
perfect.
familiar with this process.
I will zip it then.
Although the three members that are new to our committee may not recall, Senator Hardy brought a bill 2 years ago, I think it was, trying to get artwork to be more inclusive in the building. A discussion kind of broadened out with the curator to talk about interpretive and exhibition areas. And that's where this money is apparently coming through now.
Mr. Chairman, I was on the Friends of the State House Committee that developed the recommendation that this committee made based its bill on, Senator Hardy's bill. I want to, since the issue is up, the main idea was that it's all old white guys on the walls, because we honor mainly governors, and with one exception, all our governors were white guys. And then we want to have more people of color and more women, which would mean we probably have to have more people who contributed things other than being governor. And I support that. I do want to add one thought though, which is that we don't even have the right white guys. Thaddeus Stevens is consigned to the staircase to the men's room, a black and white etching, and one of the authors of the 13th Amendment ought to be more honored. And that the central lobby, the Battle of Manila was not nothing, but it's treated as though it's the central event of Vermont history, and that might want to be reconsidered as well. I don't know if this is the line item to do it with, but just since we're discussing that, I thought I'd throw that in.
Well, I think the best part about this particular line, it's the first line item for any design that's well below $500,000. And it looks like they're trying to get construction in there too, which is pretty remarkable for 80,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is very thrifty.
Yep. White River Junction.
Last
What do
item,
they
Mr.
need
Chair.
renovated?
White River Junction Courthouse renovation. The biggest thing with this facility is that it was built with what they call pneumatic HVAC controls, and it's a fascinating system of springs and pulleys that open and close louvers, and very basic sensor systems. And we were actually just experiencing how difficult this system is to work with because, as you may know, the judiciary is trying to get jury trials going again. And in order for them to do that, we had to provide so much fresh air, and we just could not make that work with this system. So we were actually allocated design funds quite a while ago. I'd have to rely on others on what year that actually happened. So we started design, but then the construction funds were pulled, so we stopped design. And the plan now is if we truly get traction here to complete the renovation, we'll finish up the design with the funds that we already have, and then we'll start allocating construction funds starting in FY23. There are some other items. It's not just HVAC. There's some security concerns that will be improved as well. Again, since we're going in there to work on HVAC and we're going to have to tear a bunch of ceiling panels and wall units down, let's go ahead and address some of the interior work as well. So that's why you see a price tag that's not necessarily relative to just HVAC. There's quite a bit more going on. Even some exterior work, there's the sidewalks around the parking lot are beat up pretty well, and some of them are creating tripping hazards, and so that will be addressed. There's even some site work involved with this project.
That's all right. Senator McCormick will be happy to get all that money down into Windsor County for hot air.
Let's
Only
not
if
go
I can
there.
get,
Let's be
only if
careful.
I can get credit for it.
I'm sure you'll be there for the ribbon cutting.
Absolutely.
We'll get a golden shovel ready for you, Senator.
Thank you.
All
Not real
right.
gold.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention that, in the garage at my office, I have a shovel that's a gold shovel with Howard Dean's name scribbled on it for the courthouse in St. Johnsbury when that was redone. We're gonna skip ahead now because we're well behind our schedule to section 15. Eric and Joe, you're still with us, I understand. Jeremy, you're welcome to stay, but I don't think you're on this list anymore.
Mr. Chair, I would love to stay, but I have some other projects that are calling my name, and Director Asia and Eric Philcorn have you in good hands here. But I just wanted to say thank you again for your time. We'll get you some information regarding Springfield to kind of give you an idea of how these numbers come together, and looking forward to meeting with you again.
If you could send that directly to Denise and ask Denise to post it to our committee webpage, that would be most appreciated.
Mr. Chair, no
Thanks.
problem. It might take a little while to go through the review and approval process before we send it up to the committee there, but
Okay.
you got it. We'll start working on that right away.
Let us know if there's any design costs for that, all right?
10%.
You might see that in the next testimony.
Thanks
Okay,
for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
If we could take down the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can just stop sharing, then it'll be all.
Yep.
There you go.
Big
There you
red
go.
button.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
I was expecting Chad Wierzniak, is that how he says his last name? But I don't see him on here. He was on the schedule.
Yes, he was on the schedule. Apparently, I had sent a reminder just in the middle of the first part of the meeting because I hadn't heard from him again, and no answer.
Well, he's the
So-
chief financial officer of the Department of Labor. He probably figured out somewhere along the way that if he went over to the design component, he would probably be paid more money than being a chief financial officer. So hopefully, Eric and Joe, you can fill us in on section 15, the Department of Labor.
Certainly can. Without much difficulty at all.
I'll kick off and then hand it to Joe, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
The Department of Labor building from the outside and the inside is very 1960s. I've been told that they could shoot Mad Men there and everything in the space would be authentic. In addition to the furnishings and finishes being 1960s vintage, so are the mechanical systems. The other important thing to note about this building, which you may already have on board, is that we don't entirely own it. We own a share of it, and the majority stakeholder is the federal government. But they pay for a good chunk of our program. They pay for a good chunk of the building, and we are committed to using the building in the long term. So even though we don't completely own the building, we do have a responsibility to maintain it. And so over the past year, we have done a study of the structure and the systems. And I believe it was Freeman French Freeman that put together a report that has just arrived in our hands or is about to arrive in our hands. And Joe has the pulse on where that is at.
Thank you, Eric. That's true. We have a draft report so far. We don't have the final dollars in front of us yet. But it is roughly in the ballpark that we are requesting. And this project started in the last biennium by asking for some money to look at the programming and to potentially get going with some of the construction. We did take a step back because of, as Eric said, of not owning the building and what to do with the building, to take a better look at the whole building. And so we have done that. And the Freeman French Freeman report looks at everything. It's a 42,000 square foot building constructed in 1966. And as Eric said, it's original, and most of it is original. Carpet's been replaced, might have had a coat of paint, but when the outside of the building is relatively untouched, and some of the interior of the space has been untouched. So when you enter in, you have this aluminum and stainless steel finishes that you come through into a marble lobby, and it does feel like the 60s when you walk in. Some people like that, some do not. But because of the 60s and the way offices were back then, there are inefficient work areas that could be changed to today's operations to make it more efficient and fit more people in, and provide more areas for meetings and the likes of that. So another unique historic item of the building is it has internal blinds in the windows. So it has glass on both sides with blinds in the center. Unfortunately, that is very historic. So what do you do with that? It's very difficult to find windows like that, although there was a company in the 80s who made them. And I
The
believe
door to my garage has one of those.
and some are making them now, but they have a removable cover over them so that you can get to the blinds. So some of these blinds have failed over time, so we'd have to come up with a fix. And what do you do with the entrance? It is a grand entrance, and you really, because of historic preservation and likes of that, you can't change it much. But it does have a center core where the restrooms are there, the stair tower, and the elevator, and in one of the back corners you have another means of egress. The bathrooms are original. They were modified. I'm not sure. Might have been in and around the 80s with the first bit of ADA for compliance. So they do not meet today's ADA code, but they do meet the code that came out prior to the 2010 code to make it ambulatory, which basically means you put grab bars in the stalls. It was a little bit wider, but you can get a wheelchair in there and turn 360 degrees without hitting something. So they do need to be updated. And again, the boilers are original. It is a hot water boiler, so that's a bonus to instead of converting from steam. And there's also the air handling and cooling tower. The cooling tower is the for the HVAC air conditioning system. So this report is looking at it, what to do first, and obviously it's working on the infrastructure stuff, boilers and the HVAC system. But you do want to look at where you think you're going to be in the future. And if we can create this building for energy, meet some of today's energy codes, your heating and cooling systems don't have to be so large. So it's difficult to have this out in front of you, because if you replace the boiler system and the cooling system for an insulated building you don't insulate, then you're underheating and undercooling. But if it's timed right, and that's what we're looking to do, is lay this out in the years, is take care of the boilers and air handling system first and go through and strategically renovate the building so that we have the right systems in there for the next 20 plus years.
There is, as I'm sitting here listening to you describing the building itself, there is some kind of a computer mainframe system in there that I'm totally unfamiliar with, that is obviously in need of upgrading as a result of some of the labor problems that we had over the COVID period.
Yeah, there is a corner in the building that has a computer room in it, and their systems are in there.
And is there some game plan to work in coordination with whatever we have to do to replace that system?
The room itself has got its own heating and cooling system to maintain the proper atmosphere for that. It may still have to be checked if a new system went in to make sure that it can handle the load of that new system. But I believe it could be there. Is it in the right location in the room or in the building? I'm not so sure about that. That would be one of those things that with ongoing designs, knowing what they get for a computer system, if that's the place to put it, that would become part of the design process. Maybe it doesn't have to be where it's located now. It could go into a less prominent location.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Congratulations, gentlemen. You've talked my committee into oblivion.
I think we wore you out.
We're taking a nap.
You're welcome.
Well, I appreciate you coming this afternoon. I'm sure we're going to be back in touch with you on some other things in the not too distant future.
I think we're back tomorrow, aren't we?
I believe you are.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to let you two go and say
Okay.
thanks for coming by this afternoon. And I want to talk with my committee about logistics.